I'm Ethan, and I come from a broken family. My upbringing was dominated by a controlling mother and her intrusive sisters. Megan, the eldest of my aunts, was 13 years older than me, while Mia was 10 years my senior. It's fair to say I was an unexpected addition, often blamed for my parents' split. My father walked out in 1977 when I was just 5 and never came back. My childhood was marred by bullying both at school and at home. All I wanted was a sign of love from my mother, a simple gesture of acceptance that never materialized. Despite these hardships, I excelled in academics, dedicating 12 years to my studies. By 1993, I had made it to Kingston University in South London, thrilled to be away from my chaotic home life. That's where I met Chloe. Her image is still vivid in my mind. She was the picture of beauty and confidence, whereas I was timid and introverted. Chloe was finishing up her creative writing degree, while I was deep into my master's in mechanical engineering and design. My shyness kept me from approaching her, and she seemed to effortlessly attract attention from men. Standing at 5 feet 5 inches, with captivating brown hair and eyes, Chloe's beauty seemed out of my league. The men who chased after her were outgoing and popular. To my surprise, one of Chloe's friends struck up a conversation with me at a party, which eventually led to Chloe joining us. Despite my inexperience with women, my humility and awkwardness seemed to draw her in. With a burst of courage, I asked her out, and we started dating. I'll admit she took advantage of my innocence, but after about 6 months, rumors about her seeing other men started circulating. I couldn't verify these rumors and was hesitant to confront her. Chloe had always been pampered by her parents and her sister Emily, which created tension between us. I put up with her entitled behavior and her tendency to create public scenes, which often embarrassed me. Even though my friends advised me to end things, I found myself deeply in love, a feeling I had never known before. After graduation, we both found jobs and rented a flat outside Southampton, New Hampshire, where her family was located. I had long lost touch with my own family. We married a year later and had our first child, Isabella, the following year, and then Lily a couple of years after. Chloe embraced motherhood wholeheartedly, and for a time, everything seemed perfect. Over the years, my career progressed, and I joined Thompson Engineering a decade ago. The increased salary and bonuses allowed us to save for a better house. However, the economic downturn in 2008 hit hard. Jobs were lost, contracts became tougher to secure, and we were working longer hours without extra pay. During this challenging period, with the girls in school full-time, I discovered Chloe's affair with a man from our old university. I was so engrossed in work that I didn't notice until it was too late. Although I wasn't initially sure who her lover was, Lucas suspected a former classmate who had moved nearby. Confronting Chloe was pointless. She laughed off my worries, although I could sense she was hiding something. Still, my stable job and income enabled us to buy a nice house. Chloe was relentless in pushing me to get a house that would reflect our social status, whatever that meant. Despite my hesitations, I agreed, and we ended up purchasing a charming detached 5-bedroom house in Southampton. The market was favorable, so we got a good deal, even with the slightly high mortgage. Unusually for me, I opened a new savings account in just my name, depositing only my share of the bonus into it. Given that I handled all the finances and banking as the sole breadwinner, Chloe likely didn't even notice, even if I showed her the receipts. Looking back, that was one of the smartest decisions I made. I needed some financial security, unsure if Chloe might leave me if her old flame resurfaced. After that, things seemed to settle down, and my daughters remained my top priority. I supported their education and made sure to spend quality time with them on weekends, taking them to activities like dance classes, concerts, and the zoo. Chloe, on the other hand, was often absorbed in her social life with her indulgent friends. I rarely socialized with other husbands, but we all seemed to be under our wives' control to varying degrees. My friends would tease me with the Rolling Stones song, Under My Thumb, whenever I had to cancel plans for Chloe's wishes. Even at work, my colleagues would comment on my marital situation, especially about Chloe's dominance over me. It wasn't until a few months ago that everything came crashing down. Lily had just left for university, and for the first time in 18 years, it was just Chloe and me. Both of our daughters were attending our old alma mater. As I helped Lily settle into her new apartment with her sister, She turned to me and asked why I was still with their mother. I was caught off guard when Lily, usually so reserved like me, told me she'd heard Chloe was involved with James Thompson from my company. Tears started to well up in her eyes as she spoke. Although the news was a shock, it didn't completely surprise me. Over the years, I could have dug into Chloe's affairs, but I avoided it, fearing it would shatter our family and turn my daughters against me, just as my sisters had done with my father. I put up with her infidelity because I couldn't bear the thought of losing what we had built together, even though my feelings for her were still there. This revelation hit me hard in several ways. First, it made me realize just how deep my daughters' resentment towards their mother went, much deeper than I had ever thought. Second, it unearthed old wounds from my upbringing and highlighted how those past experiences shaped my weaknesses. Lastly, I realized that I was the subject of office gossip and mockery, especially from James Thompson, who, coincidentally, was not just the nephew of the company owner, but also the man cheating with my wife. I felt utterly lost, unable to continue enduring the situation, particularly now that my youngest daughter was aware of Chloe's betrayal. I knew it was time to confront her. As I sat at the kitchen table waiting for Chloe to come home, my heart raced. When she finally arrived, I found myself at a loss for words. She looked at me with a mix of apathy and contempt as she unpacked her things. Eventually, I mustered the courage to ask her about her relationship with someone else. Chloe dismissed it, saying it wasn't an affair and downplaying its significance. I was both shocked and repulsed, waiting for her to offer some sort of justification for her actions. Chloe told me she appreciated me as a provider and a friend, but admitted there were certain needs I couldn't meet. Her blunt honesty was disheartening, and I asked if that meant she was cheating on me. She clarified that only her body was involved, not her heart or mind. Her audacity left me speechless. She casually mentioned exploring relationships with younger men. I was taken aback and raised my voice, questioning her choices. Chloe warned me not to shout and, despite admitting to seeing 2 other men, expected me to stay silent. She threatened me with the ultimatum of accepting her terms or watching her leave for someone else. I remained silent, hoping she'd see the pain on my face. Chloe tried to justify her behavior by saying it was common among her friends and could even improve a marriage. I found her attempt to rationalize her actions with her friends' behavior both contemptible and self-serving. When I suggested the idea of her having another woman, she laughed it off, mocking my ability to connect with others. She confidently asserted that our relationship would continue on her terms, warning me not to ruin a good thing. And unfortunately, she was right. Throughout our 22 years together, I had been loyal and compliant. Now, everyone knew I was being betrayed, which tarnished my reputation among friends and colleagues. The next morning, I walked into my office and was immediately confronted by James Thompson, the man involved with Chloe. He greeted me with a smirk and asked about my well-being, his smug expression only adding to my frustration. I chose to stay silent. Nearby, I overheard laughter from a group of men. Their amusement only made me feel more exposed. Even Ava, the boss's secretary, seemed to find my situation amusing. Sitting at my desk, I couldn't shake the feeling of being ridiculed both at work and at home. Despite my attempts to focus, my anger lingered. Determined to understand my own background better, I decided to look into my father's history, knowing only his birthplace and his departure in 1977 at age 38. After searching family history sites for Cambridgeshire, I found several possible matches. Expecting him to have passed before my university years, I narrowed it down to 3 potential leads and posted inquiries on genealogy websites. Lost in thought, my boss, Oliver, called me into his office. Oliver, successful but morally questionable, wanted to have a word. Although I had considered leaving due to his behavior, his influence and high salary kept me around. I knew about his affair with Ava, his secretary, a secret from his 3rd wife. He mentioned hearing rumors about my wife's infidelity, and I retorted, pointing out her involvement with my nephew. He acknowledged this, chuckling about how being unfaithful seemed to run in families, leaving me in stunned silence. The conversation shifted back to business. Oliver emphasized the importance of not letting personal issues affect work, warning that if my problems interfered with the company, I might have to go. His tone was like a strict teacher scolding a student. I bit my lip, noticing Ava lingering by the door, likely collecting information to gossip about later. As I left his office, I couldn't help but wonder why a young woman like her would involve herself with an older man like Oliver Thompson. As I walked past her, I overheard more snickering, which made me lower my head and hurry away. Once the door closed behind me, the laughter erupted, clearly at my expense. Back in my office, it became evident that my presence was pointless. I had invested so much in my daughter's education, but now it felt like I was just funding Chloe's affairs. I was a simple guy who enjoyed gadgets but didn't indulge in luxuries. Most of my money went towards Chloe's extravagances, leaving me to question my own happiness. My office was a sanctuary for my creativity and success. I had designed many of the components being produced and sold here, and I was confident I could find another job if needed. They saw me as weak, and they weren't entirely wrong. I wasn't one to stir up trouble. I was content being the submissive engineer, good old Ethan. Looking at my screensaver of a family vacation, I clicked on my email and found a message from Sarah Wilson of the Cambridge Genealogy Committee. I was taken aback by the quick response. Sarah had read my inquiry about my father and had connected with a woman claiming to be his niece, Megan Davis, who was my cousin. I quickly replied with my contact information, eager to hear from Megan soon. Leaving work brought a bit of relief, and when I got home, Chloe greeted me with a smile while cooking dinner. Although I initially kept my distance, I eventually joined her for the meal. She softly asked if we could talk about the previous night. I told her it seemed pointless since she had already made her position clear. Chloe almost pleaded, acknowledging my qualities as a husband and asking me not to deny her anything. I pressed her about the betrayal and humiliation, demanding an honest answer. Flustered, she shrugged, unable to give a satisfactory response. I was growing tired of her selfishness and reflected on all the efforts I had made to keep her happy. Despite working long hours to support our needs and desires, I only received disrespect and mockery in return. I even drove an older car so she could have a newer one. She admitted to having needs I couldn't meet and gave me an ultimatum: accept her terms or she'd seek satisfaction with a younger man. I brought up James Thompson's name, stating that everyone knew about his involvement with her. Chloe bluntly confirmed this, revealing that James was essentially my boss and would inherit the company. She outlined the arrangement. He satisfied her in bed, and if I didn't comply and accept, she would leave me and he would provide everything else she wanted. As usual, I said nothing and simply got up from my seat, retreating to my study. Tears streamed down my face as I wished I could be anywhere but there. When the phone rang, I answered to an unfamiliar voice. It was Megan. We talked for about an hour, and when I hung up, I had a huge smile on my face. Megan was excited that I was exploring my father's past and had a lot to share. I learned that my mother had indeed forced my father out of the house and deceived me throughout my childhood. Tragically, he passed away in 1983 from drink poisoning when I was only 11. My grandmother had always blamed my mother for his condition. Megan told me that after leaving us, my father had wanted to reconnect with me but was unable to. We arranged to meet over the weekend at her home in Cambridge. I was thrilled, knowing this break would be beneficial. The rest of the week dragged on. At home, nothing changed, and at work, I continued to be ridiculed. James and his friends found it amusing to hang a pair of underwear on my office door with a note that read, "Please return to your wife." I was devastated. I sat at my desk and cried again that day, feeling overwhelmed and wanting to blame everyone but myself. I couldn't wait for Saturday to come. When it did, I told Chloe I was visiting a friend in London, and she seemed indifferent to my plans. I suspected she would be unfaithful, so being away might make things easier for her. The trip to Cambridge was stressful, and I arrived an hour later than expected. To my surprise, Megan greeted me with the warmest hug I'd had in years, seemingly unbothered by the delay. I met her husband, Daniel, and their children, Hannah and Samuel. We delved into discussions about my father and my newfound family. Megan's warmth and selflessness were apparent as she and Daniel animatedly discussed our family history, often finishing each other's sentences. Michael and Ella Brown, Megan's brother and cousin, joined us, and we all bonded well, exchanging stories about my father and our family. After lunch, we took a short trip, which gave me time to reflect. Upon returning, Michael and I talked about our jobs and family lives. For some reason, I found myself opening up to my new cousins. They offered me unwavering support and advised me not to tolerate my current situation. Leaving Cambridge, I felt a renewed sense of clarity. After enduring countless lies and mistreatment, the genuine kindness and honesty from my newfound family gave me hope. I realized that I needed to reclaim my happiness not just for myself, but also for my daughters, friends, and this new family I had discovered. When I got home around 8 p.m., I found Chloe getting ready to go out. I asked about her plans, and she casually mentioned she was heading out with her friends. Catching her off guard, I brought up her other lover, Leo. Chloe pleaded with me to stop mentioning it, showing little concern for my feelings. I urged her to stay and be my wife. She brushed off my concerns, insisting that she was and always would be my wife. She asked me not to deny her pleasures, promising to make things easy for me, and assured me she'd be back by midnight. Ignoring my pleas, she continued to threaten and tried to embrace me as I turned away. Unfazed, she grabbed her Prada handbag and headed for the door. Determined to assert my position as her husband, I firmly told her not to go through with her plans. She paused, looking at me as if questioning my authority, then burst into laughter. Mockingly, she asked what I would do, taunting me with the belief that I would never have the courage to leave her and that I would always be there for her. Crestfallen, I hung my head, realizing how foolish I had been, accommodating her selfishness while neglecting my own needs. It was time to end this charade and make some real changes. I wasted no time taking action. I started making plans while she was out with James or Leo, or perhaps both together. That was likely what she meant by indulging in her desires and having it all. My thoughts fueled my anger and made it hard for me to concentrate. I needed to find a way to erase any remaining affection I felt for her, and I think I found a solution. I located a box with a specific picture of my mother and sisters, the only one I had. Though skeptical, I cut out a picture of Chloe's face and pasted it next to theirs. With no love left for them, adding Chloe's smirking face might sever my emotional ties. I placed the altered picture on my study desk around 12:45 a.m., completing the task. I had mostly worked out my short-term plans, even though implementing them would take a few weeks. Fortunately, I had time on my side, as Chloe wasn't expecting my departure. Though uncertain and needing assistance, I had convinced myself to follow through. I heard someone clumsily entering through the door and peeked out the window to see James Thompson leaving. As I heard Chloe ascending the stairs, I quickly cleared my browsing history and resolved to use incognito mode from now on. After she retired to our bedroom, I went downstairs to make some coffee. Reflecting on my future away from here, especially without my daughters, felt tolerable. I decided to relocate closer to them on Monday morning and headed to work, determined not to exert myself any longer. Unbothered by the snide remarks and laughter aimed at me, I scheduled a bank meeting for 1 p.m. and used the time before to review my finances. Although it was a gamble, if successful and with the right support, I'd come out relatively unscathed. The meeting went as planned, allowing me to close my savings account and remove my name from our joint account. With a tidy sum in hand, I shut down the savings account and withdrew the cash. On my way back to the office, I stopped by PC World and bought 2 digital voice recorders, a 500 gigabytes USB 3.0 tough drive, and a new PC hard drive. Once back, I accessed the company's private customer files. It took me an hour to crack Oliver's password, which was ironically his wife's name and his 6-digit birthday. With the necessary access, I downloaded all the files to the drive, including my plans and designs for the energy-efficient hydraulic pump system that could position the company for continued success. We manufactured pumps for air conditioning units, heavy machinery, and even the dairy industry. After clearing my PC history, including all plans and work, I shut it down, swapped out the hard drive for a new one, packed everything in my bag, and reinstalled Windows. I spent the rest of the day researching competitors on my phone and browsing engineering jobs in the South London and Surrey area on Monster before calling it a day. That evening, after another quiet dinner, I retired to my study. I discovered that a major competitor, which had struggled during the financial downturn, was seeking a mechanical engineer for basic design and shop floor management. While not exactly what I wanted, it was close. Despite the £10,000 lower salary offer compared to my current job, I promptly emailed them my CV. To maintain appearances with Chloe, I chose to sleep in our marital bed that night. However, I made sure to feign sleep when she came in. Her touch made me feel nauseous, but strangely, it pleased me to react this way. My growing repulsion towards her would be beneficial in the long run. The following day, I received a call from John Anderson of Sutton Hydraulics, who was astonished by my interest in leaving Thompson Engineering for his smaller firm. Though he nearly offered me the job on the spot, I requested an interview, which he agreed to for the next day. This was a crucial step forward, and things were falling into place quickly. With some time on my hands, I began searching for flats in the area. I found one just 15 minutes from my daughter's and 5 minutes from work, and I scheduled a viewing for the day after my interview with John. I informed Oliver that I needed to visit my daughters in Kingston to sign some papers the next day, and he casually agreed. That night, I called my longtime friend Lucas Brown and arranged to meet him and his wife, Sarah, the evening after my interview and flat viewing. Lucas and Sarah were perceptive and sensed I had something on my mind. Before meeting them, I spoke with my daughters about the situation, and their supportive and understanding responses reassured me. During our gathering, I shared the details of my plan's initial phase. Their surprise at my decision to fight back was greater than their shock over Chloe's infidelity, which they saw as fairly common. Sarah offered me another cup of tea and asked about my decision to leave Chloe. I recounted my revelations from the meeting with my cousins, including my father's expulsion from the house by my mother and my sisters siding with her. My daughter's support this time was a significant relief. Lucas expressed concern, questioning if the discovery at my father's grave had been the catalyst for my decision to stand up for myself. I explained that it was indeed during my visit to the grave that I noticed something on the memorial stone that shocked me and solidified my resolve to leave. When they asked simultaneously what I had seen, I revealed that the stone featured a rose image with the words, "In loving memory," followed by my father's birth date and his age at passing, coincidentally, my current age. Lucas and Sarah recoiled slightly, understanding the gravity of the moment. I explained that I faced a choice when confronted with challenges, and I refused to emulate my father's fate. Instead, I chose to fight back and not to sacrifice myself trying to be the perfect husband while enduring mistreatment. I confessed to them how low I had felt, and Sarah, despite her previous suspicions of an affair, offered to help and shared her plan to get back at Chloe. I appreciated Sarah's toughness and felt a sense of camaraderie. I outlined my financial strategy, revealing that in 2008, I had opened a separate savings account where I deposited all my bonuses and extra cash. This had made it easier to secure a mortgage in my name alone. I detailed Lucas's role in transferring ownership of my house to a new company he would create, handling the mortgage settlement and transferring the deeds through the land registry. Although Lucas was skeptical, I assured him that Chloe wouldn't have the means to contest the plan. I pointed out that her religious parents would likely prioritize their principles over supporting her in this situation. They agreed and even offered to help cover the mortgage, allowing me to delay payment. On my way home, I visited the local Land Rover dealership and negotiated to trade Chloe's car for the latest model. We terminated the payment plan for her Range Rover Sport, which the dealership could resell as practically new. I assured the dealer that I would return for my own upgrade, knowing he would benefit from reselling Chloe's car. I picked up a 2016 brochure, not for myself but for Chloe. When I arrived home, Chloe was in the lounge, nursing a coffee and looking pale. I removed my jacket and tossed my bag on the floor, preparing to enact the second part of my plan. I expressed my love for Chloe and my desire for her to have the best. I told her I would trade in her car and buy her a new 2017 model, pointing to it in the brochure. Chloe, clearly enthusiastic, exclaimed that she loved the new car, unaware of my true intentions. She mentioned a minor hiccup. They already had a buyer for my car. She proposed taking it to the dealership by Friday afternoon, suggesting that I use her car for the weekend to visit my lovers, causing her to recoil with shock and confusion. Noticing her reaction, I inquired about what was wrong. She mentioned nothing specific, but asked if I was still upset about our arrangement. I clarified that it wasn't our arrangement, but rather hers, emphasizing that I had no say in it. I questioned if I had any choice but to accept it, hoping for a more substantial response. The next morning, Chloe seemed to believe that she had asserted her dominance and that I had surrendered. Despite the situation, she declared her love for me and expressed genuine concern. I remained silent and walked into the kitchen, where my phone rang. I stepped out to the back garden to take the call. Lucas confirmed that the money had been transferred and everything was set for the following day. Without delay, I visited the bank and met with a mortgage specialist. An hour later, the mortgage was paid off and all my remaining accounts were closed. I then opened a new account at a different bank, feeling content knowing that I would no longer be responsible for any payments unless Chloe pursued legal action. The next day, I contacted the land registry and completed the online application to transfer the property into Lucas and Sarah's new company. I received a confirmation email stating that the process would take 3 to 5 days. Once complete, I would hand over the deeds to Lucas, who could then register the property under his company's name. Later that day, I knocked on Oliver's door. Ava was there, as usual, and I suspected I had interrupted their intimate moment. She left us alone. I placed my resignation letter on Oliver's desk. He looked up with a smirk and inquired about the document. I told him it was my resignation and suggested it would be best for everyone if I left immediately, considering the situation. I told him he might not want me around for too long. Oliver appeared stunned by the news. I requested that my P-45 be ready by Monday and emphasized not mentioning my departure to anyone Chloe didn't know. Oliver pleaded, insisting that they needed me, but I countered that they apparently needed his nephew more. I informed him I would return on Monday to collect my remaining belongings. As I pretended to drop a pin from my pocket, I used the opportunity to discreetly place a digital recorder under his office seat and into the wooden frame. Concluding our conversation, I mentioned having things to do and left his office. As a parting shot, I told him not to come crawling back when he was broke, suggesting that the only thing keeping his cheating wife with him was his money. I left with a sense of satisfaction, knowing I had hit a nerve. An hour later, I drove home, picked up Chloe's car and logbook, and traded in her car at the dealership. John Reeves kindly offered to drive me home, and I accepted gratefully. When I arrived home, Chloe was sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes swollen and red from crying. I asked her what happened. Reluctantly, she told me she had contracted gonorrhea. I couldn't help but laugh. Her glare was piercing, but I didn't let it bother me. That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. The next morning, I felt refreshed and decided to sleep in the spare room. I entered our bedroom and gently woke Chloe, explaining that I was giving her space to rest and recuperate. Chloe seemed to believe I found her disgusting, but I remained silent. She started to cry, admitting she had messed up and professing her love for me, hoping for my forgiveness. Initially, I felt a twinge of sympathy, but it quickly faded. I realized I had lost all affection for the woman I had been married to for 21 years. With that realization, I left the room and got into my car, driving off contentedly. That night, I stayed with Lucas and Sarah, who hosted a dinner party with many friends and colleagues. When I returned home late Sunday morning, Chloe was up doing chores. She rushed to hug me as I walked into the lounge, but I merely patted her on the back. I suggested arranging for the new car to arrive and offered to drop her off in town so her sister could drive her to the dealership. Chloe smiled, excitedly envisioning her new Range Rover. Throughout the day, Chloe's excessive affection made me uncomfortable. She persistently tried to kiss and hug me, but I kept finding excuses to leave. By bedtime, she was in tears again. She asked if I would sleep with her and expressed a desire for reassurance. Feeling nothing, I told her that wouldn't happen until she got the all-clear from the doctor. I firmly told Chloe that she had made her bed, to which she bitterly retorted that once she was better, she was sure she could find a man willing to be with her, as she had plenty of lost time to make up for. I chuckled to myself. It took longer than expected, but the harshness was back. All the regrets from Friday night had vanished, leaving behind 21 years of resentment. In the past, I might have fallen for her manipulations, but this time, I ignored her tears and headed for the spare room. It would be my last night in the house, and I was relieved she had said those things. It erased any lingering doubts I might have had. As I looked at the doctored picture of her with my sisters, all I felt was hatred. She was only sweet when she wanted something and nasty when she didn't get it. I woke early Monday morning. Chloe was up early too for her 8:30 hair appointment, so I drove her into town as planned. I drove off knowing it could be the last time I ever saw her. I hoped it would be. On the way, I called the mobile phone company and terminated both our contracts, paying the penalty on my card. They informed me that the phones would remain in service until 5 p.m., which was perfect. Next, I headed to the office to collect my P45. As I entered the factory, I was greeted by a somber atmosphere. Word of my departure had spread, causing a brief wave of unease among my colleagues. Unsure of the reason behind their discomfort, I made my way down the corridor toward my office. Passing the coffee machine, I noticed Leo and James grinning and joking with others. I greeted them with false cheer and a good morning, though their laughter about my wife's situation failed to amuse me. I told them she wasn't doing well, attributing it to one of them giving her an unwelcome surprise. Their jaws dropped in stunned silence before I continued upstairs. Ava, waiting at the door to my office, offered a half-smile and lowered her head, perhaps indicating some newfound respect. Oliver appeared before I could knock and instructed me to take my P45 and leave. Entering his office, I discreetly slipped a recorder from my pocket under the chair, knowing I had evidence of his usual Friday rendezvous with Ava. Oliver, snapping at me, inquired if I had another job lined up. Initially ignoring him, I eventually replied that I had nothing lined up. He smirked, likely assuming I would come crawling back. I asked about my final month's pay and end-of-year bonus, which sent Oliver into fits of laughter. Ava entered with my P45, and when she asked what was amusing, Oliver explained my request for bonus and pay, finding it amusing. Ava joined in the laughter. I decided to join in, responding with laughter of my own, which left them incredulous. Ava asked why I was laughing, and I retorted by questioning why she allowed Oliver to take advantage of her every week. My laughter intensified, and they froze, Ava's eyes widening while Oliver flushed with rage. Oliver, in response, called me a scoundrel and ordered me out of his office, threatening to have me dragged out by the boys. Chuckling, I exited and collected the last of my belongings from my office. Still laughing to myself, I arrived home, unloaded the car, and surveyed the rooms. I retrieved a few Carlos Martinez artworks, wrapped them in plastic, and loaded them into my car. I collected various items, including important paperwork, the girls' birth certificates, and my wedding certificate. Using a loft ladder, I fetched old belongings like my degree and family photos. In the master bedroom, I gathered all the jewelry I had gifted Chloe, totaling over 10,000 pounds in value, as well as all the handbags, shoes, and expensive coats I had purchased. The entire wardrobe was my acquisition, so I claimed it all. My meticulous record-keeping for insurance purposes would be useful when selling everything. After finishing packing, I realized I needed a TV, so I grabbed that along with my movie collection and Blu-ray player. My car was now too full, so I decided to ditch Chloe's clothes and a few other unnecessary items, including some of my old clothes. Maya would need a new wardrobe, and the girls would gladly help me out. I gathered the best pictures of me and the girls and packed them in the car. With no real rush, since Chloe wouldn't be back until after 2 p.m., I decided to take a moment for a cup of tea, essential for maintaining a semblance of normalcy in this chaotic day. I called the TV company to cancel the satellite, phone, and internet services, and then contacted British Gas and Southern Water to terminate the utilities. These cancellations would take a few days to process, but that was fine by me. Back in the bedroom, I noticed Chloe's wedding dress, stored in a dusty old box at the top of the wardrobe. It was clear how much she cherished it. I took it down along with our wedding album from a box of photographs and gathered everything together. Using a duvet cover, I bundled the items and carried them to the garden. I dumped everything into a pile, including Chloe's clothes and belongings that I couldn't sell. I left her underwear untouched. I didn't want any reminders. After closing up the car, I checked the time. It was 1:45 p.m. I called John Anderson to let him know I'd drop off my P45 later with the night shift staff. Eager to start fresh the next day, I hoped I'd brightened his day. At 2 p.m., as I waited for Chloe's call, I found some paint thinners in the garage and poured them over the wedding dress. Just as I was about to light the fire, my phone rang. I answered calmly, and Chloe's frantic voice came through, demanding to know what was happening. I replied sarcastically, asking what she meant. She insisted that I shouldn't play dumb and pressed me for details. I asked her to calm down and questioned what she was referring to. There was a pause, and I could hear her heavy breathing along with her sister's voice in the background. Chloe mentioned she had been told that I hadn't bought her a new car but had sold hers instead. Teasingly, I said I might have forgotten to mention that. Her panic grew, and she demanded to know what was going on. Despite my heart racing, I maintained my calm and told her that if she wanted a car from now on, she'd have to pay for it herself. She yelled in confusion and frustration. I reiterated that she had heard me correctly and added that I needed to tidy up the kitchen. She asked if this was some kind of sick joke, and I chose not to respond. She declared that we would discuss it when she got home and expressed her dissatisfaction with being pranked. I hung up the phone amid her continued cries of my name. Stepping outside, I struck a match and ignited the pyre. Our shared history went up in flames as I walked away. I retrieved our marriage certificate from my pocket, tore it into pieces, and left it on the kitchen table alongside a lone photograph of us from Disneyland, an emblem of happier times. I wondered if she would reflect on those moments with any fondness. Sliding into my car, I drove off, feeling a sense of liberation. As I reached the end of the street, I noticed Chloe and Sarah rushing into the house through my rearview mirror. I powered off my phone, leaving her with no way to contact me, and drove on. By 4 p.m., I arrived in Sutton. Deciding to make good use of the time, I visited a nearby phone shop to set up a new mobile contract. I also stopped by the office to handle my P45 and met Zoe, my new secretary, who, unlike Ava, showed a level of professionalism that reassured me. Back at my new flat, I brewed a cup of tea with a kettle I had brought from home, unpacked, and ordered pizza for dinner. When I checked my old phone, I saw it had been disconnected. A smirk crossed my lips, knowing Chloe would soon be without a phone too, giving her a bit of a break before I reached out again. I set up my sleeping bag in the lounge and awaited dinner. The furniture would arrive over the weekend, but for now, I enjoyed the peace and distance from Chloe. Switching on my laptop, I reviewed recordings from Oliver Thompson's office, revealing his affair with Ava. After uploading the evidence, I made copies on USB sticks and addressed them to Oliver's wife, Claire, and Ava's boyfriend, Adam. I planned to mail them the next day. Lastly, I called my daughter Isabella to update her and advised her not to tell her mother where I was, given Chloe's current lack of communication. Over the next week, I furnished my flat and began redirecting customers from Thompson Engineering to Sutton. Despite a few loyal to Oliver, most preferred our new offerings, leading to Thompson's decline. I expected Oliver to eventually figure out the cause of his business losses, but I remained indifferent. With utilities cut off at my old home, Chloe would soon realize my absence as she struggled with the mounting bills. Lucas and Sarah started the home sale process with enthusiasm, and by the end of the week, for sale, signs were up. During this time, Lily contacted me with news that Chloe had moved back to her parents' home, where her infidelity was met with disapproval. Chloe's rage toward me strangely pleased me, although I knew this saga was far from over. By the weekend, Lucas and Sarah hosted another successful dinner party, providing a welcome break from the ongoing turmoil. On Sunday, I received 2 serious offers for my old home, both above asking price, and I accepted one immediately. As I prepared for the completion of my new life, I set up ISAs for the girls and made strategic investments. I ensured Lucas was compensated and kept a portion of the funds in cash for added security. Protecting myself remained a priority. Lucas's updates about the swift progress of the house sale delighted me. I promptly contacted a removal company to clear out my former home. Meanwhile, the girls had been in touch with their mother, who responded with heightened anger and threats. I reassured the girls that this turmoil would end soon and offered them comfort. On Tuesday morning, while discussing a potential contract renewal with a new client, I learned about Thompson Engineering's severe troubles. The client revealed that the company had lost a significant number of projects, forcing them to lay off 50% of their staff. Additionally, Mrs. Thompson had decided to divorce Oliver due to his infidelity. Despite this revelation, I felt no sympathy. My focus was on calculating my upcoming commission checks. I was uncertain about Ava and her boyfriend's fates, but I knew he had received the evidence I sent. Whether Mrs. Thompson had seen her share or not, the reason behind her divorce was crystal clear. I couldn't help but wonder what Mrs. Thompson's friends and family thought about her affair with an older man. In recognition of my hard work, I was presented with a brand new Land Rover Discovery HSE. Although I had considered treating myself, John and the executives were so impressed with my performance and the company's progress that they gave me the car along with a substantial commission exceeding £30,000. As I gazed out of my office window at the new car, I was surprised to see a familiar Ford Focus pull into the parking lot. It belonged to Laura, Chloe's mother. Expecting a confrontation, I braced myself as my office phone rang. Zoe, my secretary, informed me that a woman claiming to be my wife was in the reception area. I instructed Zoe to tell her I was in a meeting and would be down in an hour. 3 hours later, I looked out the window and saw Chloe still waiting. Resigned, I decided to leave for the night. I was prepared to confront her if necessary or just drive past if she didn't see me. Exiting through a side door, I made my way to my car. Just as I was about to get in, I heard tires screech and Chloe had blocked me in with her car. Stepping out, I saw her storming toward me, fury evident in her disheveled appearance. Clad in worn-out clothes that seemed to be her sister's, her unkempt hair added to her distressed look. "You damn idiot!" she screamed, trying to slap me but missing. Fueled by rage, she demanded retribution. I urged her to calm down and suggested we sit in the car to talk. Chloe was taken aback by the sight of the new Land Rover and began to express her financial struggles, pleading for my return. I told her that since I couldn't meet her needs and didn't compare to her younger lovers, I felt redundant in her life. She then pleaded for me to come home, claiming she wanted to move past the situation and was willing to forgive me. I could hardly believe what I was hearing and asked if she was serious. She insisted that she forgave me for wrecking her life. I questioned her claim of forgiveness, pointing out her open cheating and disrespect. I firmly told her I would never be with her again and suggested she should be with one of her lovers. Chloe mentioned how her friends treated her differently now and how their husbands questioned their fidelity. While I acknowledged some responsibility for her situation, I still felt no inclination to reconcile. She admitted that she faced consequences for her actions and had ruined a good life through greed and disrespect. Despite her pleas, I knew I had to move forward. She continued to beg me to return, claiming she had nothing left and inquired about her share of the house and the need for a divorce. I pointed out that she had never once said she loved me, only that she needed me. I made it clear that I didn't need her. I told her I had defaulted on the mortgage and lost the house, revealing that I had lied. Her reaction was one of shock, and I understood the real purpose of her visit. Declaring my desire for a divorce, she pleaded desperately, acknowledging her mistake and claiming severe punishment. I emphasized that her mistake was huge and unforgivable, and reiterated that I would never return to her. Her cries filled the car as she screamed and begged. Offering a proposition, I suggested a clean break and offered her £30,000 in cash if she agreed to the divorce. Her demeanor shifted as she became resolute, yelling that she would fight me in court for everything and asserting that I hadn't lost the house. I admitted that she was correct, but explained that she wouldn't get a penny from me. I warned her that I would move my assets around to make them difficult to trace, and that her legal fees would likely outweigh any gains. I gave her a choice: accept the money or face a costly legal battle. She reacted angrily, expressing love and accusing me of mistreatment. She contrasted our girl's future prospects with her own shortcomings. I told her to take the money and leave my life. She spat back that she would take the money and proceed with the divorce. I agreed to arrange it, and she exited my car, slamming the door behind her. Moments later, she sped away from the parking lot. The following day, I initiated divorce proceedings, citing infidelity as the grounds. A week later, I arranged a meeting with Chloe at the girl's apartment. Although the sale of my house was complete, I postponed any new investments until the papers were signed. Maintaining civility in front of the girls was challenging. I handed Chloe the cash, and she signed the divorce papers. After bidding farewell to the girls and wishing Chloe luck, I prepared to leave. Chloe suddenly burst into tears, though I suspected it was more for the girls' benefit. Isabella and Lily exchanged knowing glances, and Lily mentioned seeing me next weekend at the Coldplay concert they were excited about. As I left, I realized the significance of Lily's mention of the concert. Isabella asked about our plans, and I mentioned I would check with Amy and update them during the week. Ignoring Chloe's shouting as I walked away, I closed the door behind me, ready to move on with my new life.